YouTube, what is going on? It is your boy Young Mustard, and I'm back with my Meet the Overrated Players of the 2000 series. And today we are here to do part 2. Now, you guys, if you missed the last episode where I discussed T-Mac, aka Tracy McGrady, I suggest you guys go check out that video right now. And today we are going to talk about the one and only truth, Paul Pierce. Now lately everyone has been either on Paul Pierce's hate to say that, or they've just been killing Paul Pierce with this slander lately about him being petty, about IT's video tribute being on the same day as his own jersey retirement for the Boston Celtics. Now, I personally think he should get his own jersey retirement without any type of attention towards anyone else, because IT could have gotten his own video tribute while he was in Boston the first time and they played, so I don't think they should even consider doing it again. IT, you missed your opportunity. But all those people that are taking up for Paul Pierce for whatever reason that I just cannot understand, and just making these asinine comments on Twitter and on social media, it just makes no sense to me. This myth that Paul George was one of the most clutch players in NBA history, it's true, but it's actually not true, because like I said in my last video, people embellish in moments too much. They live in the moment way too much. I mean, when you look at someone like Kobe Bryant, the moments for Kobe actually live more than his actual resume, because when you look at the resume of so many great players, people overlook some of the times that they underperformed and they just brush it off of their resume. And Paul Pierce consistently underperformed in his career, as when you look at numerous times, he just consistently failed to show up to some games. And this was just something that happened from the beginning to the end. And I'm talking about till the Brooklyn days and the Washington Wizard days and even the Clipper days. He choked a lot, and people just failed to talk about it. Now, the first thing that we're going to talk about is the skill set of Paul Pierce, his accomplishments and things like that. Now, for those who don't know, Paul Pierce was a 6'7" small forward going into the NBA draft in 1998 and was selected by the Boston Celtics at the 10th overall pick. Played a majority of his career in Boston, let's just call it what it is. He was a Celtic lifer, basically. He went to the Nets in 2014, also went to the Wizards and the Clippers, and then retired on a one-day contract with the Boston Celtics. He was an NBA champion in 2008 and was the Finals MVP. He was a 10-time All-Star, 4-time All-NBA selections, and he was an All-Rookie first team. He was a phenomenal scorer. Okay, he had great scoring skill set. He could stretch the floor and make threes, take it to the paint. He was actually more athletic than I think a lot of people remember, because let's just be real, a lot of the better moments of his career kind of came after the 2008 NBA championship. Let's just call it what it is. And a lot of fans just did not watch back then when he was dunking, because he was actually a solid dunker. Let's just call it what it is. He was more athletic. But the negatives of Paul Pierce is that he was not that great of a defender. Let's just call it what it is. And as he got older, I'm not gonna lie, he kind of became sort of a liability on the defensive side of the ball, because his athleticism really waned from him. Now, some people may be wondering why I think Paul Pierce is overrated. Well, for starters, let's just start with this. Paul Pierce, in my opinion, was never a top 10 player in the 2000s. Let's just call it what it is. When you have players such as Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, Allen Iverson, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Steve Nash, Jason Kidd, Dirk Nowitzki. Also, you could argue T-Mac, Ray Allen when he was in Milwaukee, of course. And then maybe you have Paul Pierce, but you could even take it a step further. You have Dwight Howard, Yao Ming, Chris Webber, Vince Carter, Chauncey Billups, Tony Parker. I mean, there are numerous players that you could argue. Now, obviously, some of those players that I mentioned, such as Tony Parker, you could put Paul Pierce ahead, and I wouldn't even be mad at that. But at the end of the day, you have to also consider that Tony Parker won championships in the 2000s, and he was a Finals MVP the year before Paul Pierce was Finals MVP, and he was a 3-time All-Star and made the All-NBA third team in 2009, and the rookie team. So when you look at the accolades, Tony Parker also eclipsed Paul Pierce. So when you look at the 2000s, he was never even a top 10 player. And when you look at his position, you could argue he was never even the best player at his position, as LeBron kind of took that over after 2005, 6, and definitely after 2007. So to me, in my eyes, Paul Pierce's rankings in the NBA, never a top 10 player, never the best at his position, never better than Kobe, LeBron, never really in that elite class of players. And later on, even when he won the finals MVP, he still was never a top 10 player, as one could argue KG was even better than him in Boston when they were playing together. So at least in my eyes, he arguably wasn't even the best player on his team when they won the championship. May have had the best performance, but he probably wasn't even the best player, as KG, yes, he wasn't as great as Paul Pierce offensively, but defensively, we all know KG was that driving force, as he won Defensive Player of the Year in 2008 and was still an All-NBA defensive player up until 2012. So in my personal opinion, he wasn't the best on his team, wasn't the best at his position in the league, wasn't even a top 10 player in the league ever. So this whole myth that he was up there with the elite players back then, that's wrong. And then when you look at the clutchness of Paul Pierce, don't get me wrong, you have amazing moments from Paul Pierce that I think a lot of people should be aware of. Like, for example, what he did to LeBron James with that shot in Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals.
Pierce for three. It's good. Paul Pierce from way downtown. And Boston leads by 4.
The shot he hit in the playoffs against the Chicago Bulls when the series was tied 2-2 and he took a 3-2 lead.
Not to give him any space. Rich Pierce. Is this the dagger?
Or you could even go further in his career when he hit that shot for the Washington Wizards against the Atlanta Hawks.
5 seconds left. Pierce with 3. Pierce with 2. Pierce fall away at the horn. It's gone! Paul Pierce does it again as the Wizards win it 103-101.
That was clutch. Don't get me wrong. Paul Pierce has had amazing clutch moments, but I think people fail to realize that he has underperformed numerous times, and I mean numerous times. A lot of people remember the comeback that Boston had in Game 2 against the Nets and how they took an early 2-1 lead in the series, but nobody talks about what happened afterwards because Paul Pierce underperformed in the final 3 games. Paul Pierce averaged just under 24 points per game on 36% field goal shooting with just under 4 turnovers per game. And in the elimination game, he had 14 points but shot 34% from the field and had 4 turnovers. And against the same Nets team in the next season, Paul Pierce lost the first 2 games, falling 0-2 in the series. And what did he do to respond? He did what he normally does, and he choked because he shot 32% from the field and averaged 6.2 turnovers per game in the last 2 games of that series, and they got swept. Yes, swept. And in 2003, in the Nets series, his elimination game stats were 27 points, 10 rebounds, and 7 assists, but shot 29% from the field and had 7 turnovers. And then in his next playoff appearance, Paul Pierce faced the Indiana Pacers. And you'd think after horrible playoff performances against the Nets back-to-back years, he'd respond amazingly, but nah. He shot horrible from the field, 34% from the field. Yes, in that series, he shot 34% from the field and also turned the ball over 6.3 times a game. Yes, 6 turnovers a game. That is Russell Westbrook stupidity right there. And then it just didn't get better in the playoffs, as in 2005 he had a first round exit, And in 2006 and 2007, he had back-to-back misses of the playoffs. Yes, he did not make the playoffs back-to-back years. And it's funny how as soon as he got KG and Ray Allen, that's when he was able to step it up and get to the finals. Yes, he actually got to the finals, but a lot of people fail to realize the road that the Boston Celtics went to get to the finals and how he was carried by KG, Ray Allen, and also even Rajon Rondo. Yes, it gets that bad because when you look at some of these games and some of these series, Paul Pierce underperformed. As in the first series against the Atlanta Hawks, they went to 7 games, which they shouldn't have, as they had an early 2-0 lead, and Atlanta tied it up. Paul Pierce in Game 3 had a horrible outing, as Paul Pierce had 17 points, 8 assists, but he shot an abysmal 38.5% from the field, and it was just horrendous. And when you look at the teammates that he had, Kevin Garnett showed up, as KG had 32 points and 10 rebounds, grabbed 4 offensive rebounds. Yes, 4 offensive rebounds, shot 91% from the free throw line and just under 58% from the field. And then when you look at the next game, which was Game 4, that they lost by 5, because those 2 games that they lost in Game 3 and Game 4, those were games that were winnable, but they lost by single digits, as Paul Pierce in Game 4 had 18 points, also had 5 assists and 7 rebounds, but he shot an abysmal 36% from the field. That is horrendous, and I don't think there's any type of excuse that should be made for that in any way, shape, or form. But when you look at his teammates, Kevin Garnett dropped 20 points, not that efficiently, but when you look at what Ray Allen did, Ray Allen had 21 points and he dropped 5 of 8 3-pointers and shot 57% from the field. So his teammates showed up to play in both games, but he failed to show up. And when you look at Game 7, which they blew the Hawks off the floor, they won in spite of him, not because of him, as he had 22 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 assists, but he shot horrendous from the field. He shot 35% from the field and 22% from 3. And if it wasn't for his team stepping up and closing out the game, they probably would have lost, because at the end of the day, this is a Game 7. This is where you're supposed to shine. Shooting 35% from the field and 22% from 3 is unacceptable. But when you look at the fact that Rondo had 10 points on 80% field goal shooting, Kevin Garnett also had 18 points and 11 rebounds on 69% field goal shooting, and Kendrick Perkins had 10 points and 10 rebounds and 5 blocks. Leon Powell had 12 points off the bench. This team was firing on all cylinders except for Paul Pierce. He consistently underperformed, and he kind of got carried by Kevin Garnett at times in the playoffs, and sometimes even Rondo and Ray Allen, and that's shown as you continue to look at the 2008 playoff run that the Boston Celtics had, because in the Cleveland Cavaliers series that went to 7 games, which shouldn't have, by the way, Paul Pierce averaged 19 points, just under 4 assists and 5 rebounds, but shot 40% from the field, not that great shooting, and shot 33% from 3. As in Game 1, which they won by 4, he was carried yet again, as he had 4 points. Yes, 4 points. Could you imagine LeBron James having 4 points in a playoff game? Because we killed him for having 8 points in the finals, but he had 4. Yes, Paul Pierce had 4 points, 4 assists, and 5 rebounds, and 6 turnovers. Missed all 3 of his 3-point attempts, and shot 14% from the field. But guess what? Cleveland still lost. You want to know why they lost? Because of the fact that Kevin Garnett and his teammates stepped up. Kevin Garnett had 28 points, also had 8 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals, and shot 59% from the field. Kendrick Perkins had 2 blocks and 12 rebounds, and also, yes, he didn't have that many points, but Rondo had 15 points and also 6 assists and 63% from the field. I mean, Paul Pierce was just horrendous in that game, as Boston would take the early 1-0 lead. But then when you just look at some of the other games against Cleveland, Paul Pierce consistently underperformed, and his team carried the slack for him, as in Game 3 and Game 4 and also Game 6, he was horrendous, as in game 3 he had 14 points, also had 5 assists, 4 turnovers, 3 rebounds, and shot 37.5% from the field and 40% from 3, so I'm gonna give him some props from 3, but he shot hella inefficient. And then also in game 4 he had 13 points, also 3 assists, 5 rebounds, but shot a horrible 35% from the field. And then in game 6, which they lost again, he had 16 points, 6 turnovers, 2 steals by the way, 3 assists and 5 rebounds, but shot 33% from the field and 33% from 3. It was not a great day for Paul Pierce in game 3, 4, and in game 6. It should never have gone to a game 7, and when you compare his averages for the first 2 series in comparison to KG, it was clear KG was doing most of the work, even on some of the offensive side of the ball. That should have been Paul Pierce's responsibility in the first place. And when you look at the 2008 NBA Finals, Paul Pierce arguably should never have won the Finals MVP, as in the first 2 games he was phenomenal. I'm gonna give him his props because in the first game he had 22 points, 2 assists, and 4 rebounds and shot hella efficiently finally. He shot 70% from the field and 75% from 3. And in game 2 as well, which they did win both games, he had 28 points, also 8 assists and 4 rebounds, shot 86% from the free throw line, made all 4 of his threes, and shot 56% from the field. But the last 4 games, he was horrendous and nobody talks about it, because in the last 4 games he averaged 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 7 assists to 3.5 turnovers, shot 20% from 3 and under 36% from the field. But nobody likes to talk about that. And what's funny is, like I said, he was carried a lot throughout the playoffs, and it includes the finals. And we all know Paul Pierce ain't doing nothing on that defensive side of the ball. And in the last 4 games for KG though, KG, he was phenomenal, as KG averaged 17 points, 13 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, 1 block. His defense was great, not the greatest from the field, shot 45%, but you remember what I said before, it wasn't only KG that did some of that carrying. Sometimes it was Rondo and sometimes it was Ray Allen, because we forget that Ray Allen throughout that whole series shot hella efficient. That was crazy, and he was phenomenal throughout that series, as he averaged 20 points, under 3 assists, 1 block, 1 steal, 5 rebounds, and shot 87% from the free throw line, 51% from the field, and 52% from 3. And then when you look at the last 4 games for Ray Allen, it even gets better, as he shot 53% from the field, 57% from 3, just under 90% from the free throw line, and averaged 22 points, 2 assists, and 5 rebounds, a block, and 2 steals. Ray Allen was phenomenal, had some of the greatest shooting splits that we had ever seen in the NBA Finals. And when you look at that closeout game that Boston had against the Lakers, which they blew them off the court by 39 points, where the Lakers scored 92 and the Celtics scored 131 points. Yes, it was just a beating from that team. The Celtics did not win that game because of Paul Pierce, because Paul Pierce had one of the worst closeout games that I think any player who's considered clutch can have, as he had 17 points. Yes, he did have 10 assists, 3 rebounds, but shot 29% from 3 and 31% from the field. Meanwhile, Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, and Rajon Rondo, they showed up to play, as Kevin Garnett had 26 points, 4 assists, 3 steals, 1 block, 14 rebounds, shot 86% from the free throw line, also shot 56% from the field. Ray Allen as well had 26 points, 3 steals, 2 assists, and 4 rebounds, and shot 77.8% from 3, made all of his free throws, and shot 66.7% from the field. And Rajon Rondo as well had 21 points, 6 steals, yes, 6 steals, 8 assists, 7 rebounds. And yes, he wasn't that efficient, but when you're putting up 21 points, you win by over 30 points, and you had 6 steals, Come on, you have to look at the defensive side of the ball, the offensive side of the ball. They were just phenomenal. Paul Pierce, the so-called finals MVP, he's the one who underperformed numerous times in the finals, and KG, even Rondo, and Ray Allen picked up the slack. And in my honest opinion, Ray Allen and Kevin Garnett, they are the ones who you could even give them a co-finals MVP. I honestly don't care. I just don't think Paul Pierce should have won the finals MVP in 2008. And then when you look at other things that happened in Paul Pierce's career, such as him saying he wants to guard LeBron James when he played him when he was on the Brooklyn Nets, what kind of arrogance is that, bruh? You're just not as good as the defender. Now, honestly, I'm not going to hold any of his failures when he was in Brooklyn or even LA or even Washington against him, because at the end of the day, he was older. But we cannot overlook some of the performances, because when he was with the Washington Wizards, that closeout game against Atlanta, I'm not even going to read the stats. Y'all go check that out for yourselves. It wasn't that great, because a lot of people tend to forget his failures. And that's what I'm here for, YouTube. I'm here to highlight what you guys fail to remember and what you guys sometimes want to forget. Because at the end of the day, Paul Pierce is just not as great as some people hype him up to be. Paul Pierce is not even a top 10 small forward ever. Yes, I'm going to say that. And I can name 10 players off the top of the dome that are better than Paul Pierce at the small forward position. LeBron James, Dr. J, Larry Bird, Kevin Durant, Elgin Baylor, John Havlicek, Rick Barry, Scottie Pippen, James Worthy, Dominique Wilkins. I mean, that's 10 right there. And all those players are arguably top 50, and most of them are not even debatable. And Paul Pierce is not on that top 50 list. And I'm sorry to Paul Pierce, but you were carried by KG, Ray Allen, and sometimes even Rondo, as pathetic as that sounds, at certain parts in the playoff run. You were never the best player on the championship team, and also you were never top 10 in the league, and you were never even the best player at your position. And when it comes to the MVP, were you ever even that close? So at the end of the day, let's not embellish in the moments of the truth, but let's just look at his career in its totality and understand, yes, he has clutch moments, but he has failures that we really need to understand, take away from his resume, and it puts stains on his resume. Because at the end of the day, Paul Pierce is just not as great as he even hypes himself up to be. Let's just call it what it is. The man thinks if he was in his prime, LeBron James wouldn't have the rings that he has. Let's just remove that asinine comment away from any type of logic, because that makes no sense whatsoever. And if you believe that, you need to watch basketball more, because that makes absolutely no type of common sense at all. So you guys, make sure you leave a like on this video, comment down below your opinions if you agree or disagree. Part 3 will be coming in the next 2 days, so stay tuned for that, because that guy that I picked for the next video is going to get hella controversial comments in the comment section, so stay tuned for that. Follow me on Twitter to get updates. The link will be down below. And without further ado, I'm out. Peace.
We ain't in a rush, girl. It's just us, girl. Let me know what's up, girl. What's up, girl? Cause I'm gonna hold it down. Beat it up, go down. Beat it up, take it down, 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 down. I'ma beat it up. Let me switch up the tempo. Let me switch up the tempo.